Despite the attacks on Elon Musk, Tesla is responding by going on offense. They're betting big and now committing to doubling production output in the US. They're building a new Megapack factory in Texas. They're now selling in India, investing $5 billion in the Cortex AI data center, moving forward with Robotaxi plans and new vehicles to be unveiled in the next few months. Where is the competition? We'll look at that today. We've got the bulls here with us today. I've got Alexandra Mertz, Tesla Boomer Mama, the Queen. You got Jeff Lutz, the Rational Bull, the Mr. Incredible, and our special guest this week is James from InvestAnswers, the Analytical Bull. Welcome, everybody. How are we all doing today?
Good.
Perfect.
So yesterday, Elon posted, right? He was saying that he has faith and he has confidence in the future of the United States, and he's, in order to also support President Trump's policies, said he's willing to bet big and committing to doubling production output in the U.S. Let's start with you, James. Do you think that Tesla is actually going on offense now and really going to go forward with investing as even more than they have in the past year or two?
Absolutely. It's sometimes when you go through a hard time or a bad experience, it actually makes you stronger and you come out of it stronger. And I see somehow it's almost like a backlash against domestic terrorism, as you see here from not just Tesla, but also Musk Industries. But there's also an interesting backlash. Again, it's been a very rough 2025 so far. We'll look at some charts and other things about that. But I think what's fascinating is now there's like revenge buying happening of Teslas out there all over the place. We have analysts talking about new terms like AI compounding and other stuff. We know the cyber cabs are around the corner. What exactly does that mean? People are still confused. People think, Tesla's late, the competition already there. They already own the market. No. And then Optimus. And we see just like that too, demos of robots around the world doing incredible things. And again, people say, oh, Tesla's too late, but we'll talk. I'd like for us as a panel to talk about how they still have an insurmountable edge with data points and why they'll be very difficult to catch, despite not being so-called first to market for some of these things. Then we'll look at the analyst corner and a whole bunch. But I think I actually did a very interesting survey yesterday because I personally, I love to understand how the audience think and feel and their emotions and what their questions are and problems so we can administer some pain pills. And yes, there is some pain right now, but also the ability to look on the bright side. But I polled the audience, my audience yesterday, 7,500 votes so far of who believes in fraud, waste, and abuse and who doesn't. Like who basically likes what Doge is doing and who doesn't. And the response was 11% agree with fraud, waste, and abuse. So I was happy. I thought it would have been much higher in that poll. So let's get into it. There's a lot to discuss today. Good to be here.
Thanks, James, very much. Yeah, that poll that you did is I think what Alexandra was addressing a couple of shows ago, where she said, really, it's whether or not you as a person out there, right, or investor in Tesla, if you believe that Elon is evil or you don't. If you think that he's evil, then no matter what he's doing, you're going to just say, oh, he's doing it for his own personal gain. And so, Alexandra, do you think that, I mean, there's just this major disconnect right now. There's so many people out there who really do believe Tesla is losing sales. They're in big trouble. Things are no longer going their way. And it's just complete, stock is way overpriced. And yet there's us who are actually looking at this going, he's doubling down. He's investing in all these places. How are you seeing things now, Alexandra?
Yeah, I mean, we said it after the earnings call. 2025 is not going to be a glorious year with a lot of increase in sales, right? There is just such a transition period, but it is all perfectly in place for what is yet to come. If you've studied Tesla, if you understand Robotaxi, if you understand the bots, if you understand the revenues that will stem from these two lines, you should not worry about whether there is this quarter more sales or less sales. And then on top of it is obviously the ramp of our most sold vehicle simultaneously pushed out from all three gigafactories all over the world. So, I mean, it's amazing, but it is also a point where the numbers could be interpreted as weakness. There's no weakness at all, but it gives this enormous open flank to a press that doesn't want to do their homework because they don't want to learn about it, and to all the Elon and Tesla haters. So be it. I mean, we should be intelligent enough to just ignore it and move on. As to do I really think it is that bad? I can relay on a personal episode that happened yesterday. Let me just recall. In December, I wanted to order a Cybertruck because I had received an email from Tesla that I could terminate my lease of the current Model X early. I understood that would mean, the lease would just terminate. But what actually it meant, once we were in the process of ordering the Cybertruck and all that, is that, yes, I could hand in the Model X, but I still had to pay those 6 months that were outstanding and actually upfront so that I could get out of this lease. So yes, they let me get out of the lease, but at a financial loss, because then I would suddenly pay for a car that I wouldn't have. So I canceled that whole deal. I'm still in love with the Cybertruck, but what happened yesterday is something else. So they contacted me yesterday by text, a lady from the call center in Nevada called Ila, who was great. Shout out to her. And she said, well, there's already lease termination. Yeah, I know that joke already. You did that with me in December. Don't do it again. And she goes, no. This time we're actually offering 2 months of no payment. So my lease expires on the 28th of June. That would mean I could hand it back end of April, 28th of April, and there was no payments due for May and June. So I accepted that. I had the choice of any current car to be ordered. I decided on the launch Model Y because it was just financially the best deal out there. So it's a long range we want. It's the all-wheel drive we want. I want it in red. Unfortunately, no white seats available anymore, so it's going to be with black seats. I could use my referral credits. Thank you to everybody who used my referral credits. And if you want to use more, please do. For the down payment, there is this $7,500 incentive. They call it a Tesla incentive. They waive the disposal fee. They give you a $500 waiver on any wear and tear. It was just, you couldn't refuse it. So within an hour, we made our mind up and ordered the red Model Y launch series. Still thinking about the Cybertruck, and that may come at a later day, but at the moment, that is what we're going to give and get for the Model X. And it went smoothly. There was enormous noise in that call center. I had to call back Ila twice because there were dates to be arranged because we're traveling to Europe that moment and we needed to be sure we could do it just before we left and all that. So there were lots of things happening and it was crazy busy there. And I said to her, "Oh my gosh, what's all this noise?" And she was like, "Well, this is the busiest day we've ever seen. This is crazy." Obviously, they had the right to call any expiring leaseholder with this offer, but there were also obviously other people purchasing Teslas, and it was all over the place. So that was it was a very enthusiastic moment because you really felt like you're grabbing the next car available. It was a nice way how it was set up.
Congrats.
Good news for you, Alexander, too. You can get white leather seat covers for your car and you can put them on after. I did that on the Cybertruck.
Okay, good, because I'm just so in love with those white seats. But there you go. Good. Thank you, James.
Yeah. So sounding like I've been hearing now that, like you just said, it's like the busiest day for the new launch of the Model Y. It's selling like hotcakes. And of course, it must have helped with President Trump showing it on, main media out there. Jeff, what are you seeing out there? I mean, again, doubling production output, doubling down on Robotaxi. They just announced a new Megapack factory. They're talking about Cortex-1 investing $5 billion and maybe more. Seems like they're really on offense right now. They're selling in India now. What's your thoughts on what's happening right now?
Yeah, you go back to the simple statements around signal versus noise. Both are actually elevated at that point. That actually happens in real life, but they're both elevated at this point, and they revolve around, the quarter and sales and political influence, not political influence, and there's data. There's absolute stark data about starting inventories for the quarter. There's stark, very clear data. If you're an operational professional, supply chain professional, and you read this data, what the primary contributors are when you see the monthly sales numbers, and you just look at it and say, well, yeah, there's probably multiple things happening here, but the primary thing is they came into the year with about 20 or almost 30% less inventory than they did from the prior year. So everybody's talking about January, but they came in with less inventory. They're drawing it down. Obviously for the introduction of the new Model Y. Again, that's real. That's real signal. That's actually what's happening. There's nothing that would get in the way of that. And the other thing is you can see Tesla favoring their cash position relative to getting out another 5,000 or 10,000 units. Yes, sales will help the overall margin structure of the company, but they're also trying to do a really good job of growing their cash position. So I would just keep people mindful of signal versus noise. The entire quarter is going to be full of noise when they're doing. And again, I've been, I think if you ask people inside of Tesla, they would probably want to do the Model Y transition faster in the future. I'm sure they're getting better generationally, but it certainly will create a lot of noise, and a lot of people will just kind of latch onto it and say that lower sales is because of everything happening, versus lower sales there actually weren't cars there. They're literally taking the lines down to zero and then re-ramping up a new model. So I would just keep everybody kind of mindful of that. We are getting encouraging data points as the new Model Y gets out there. These are real data points. We've seen the China sales in the last 2 weeks actually outstrip the sales and relative growth of a BYD or a Li Auto, meaning they're not selling more units than BYD, because BYD has an average selling price of half of a Tesla. So they're going to sell more cars. Got it. But when you look at the relative growth week on week, what you're finding is that what happened in February, what happened in January in China, was the absence of not having their new Model Y and having it at scale. And I still think they're probably having some growing pains getting this thing ramped up, but we've seen 2 successive weeks of significant growth, and I expect that to continue for the rest of the quarter. And that's signal. That's not noise. You also have the I reposted something this morning. Giga Berlin. Somebody was asked, a manager in the factory, are you in retrenchment mode? He goes, no, it's actually the opposite. We've got new models coming. We're actually expanding we're in this production expansion point in this mode. So these factories have been down. They've been retooling to build literally the number one car selling in the world. So there's no other car that sells more than this model. Down, retooling, ramping back up, came into the quarter with less inventory. I just go back to that as signal. Then I go back to the products coming. The new lower cost models, I think we'll talk about that in a bit. There's lots of stuff in the media about what these things are, they aren't. Refer to the quarterly communications from the actual company and what they say, versus you can absorb anonymous reports all you want, and maybe there's some signal in that information or not, but I would always revert back to what the company's saying. The company's saying that they're going to build these new affordable models off of the module base of the forthcoming Cybercab. So they're going to use those modules to build it, but it's what that car looks like. It's exoskeleton, I think, is what the question is, and I have my own take on that. And then finally, everybody talks about Tesla's this story. It's this Robotaxi story. It's this humanoid robot story, and there's truth to that. That's part of why the multiple is where it is. It's elevated relative to where the source of revenue is today. It's mostly auto and energy. The source of revenues in the future are going to be different, and now you see this conflict between where the multiple is relative to what it's building and shipping today and what it's doing in the future. All we can do is go off of what we're seeing with our own eyes. In terms of the Robotaxi trials, the company went from we're getting to driverless, maybe this year, to now they've actually singled it down to a quarter, and now they've singled it down to a month. And that in new product launch language, that is signal. When they can actually get to that level of specificity, that's actual signal. And then finally, on the humanoid robots, just remember, that project is moving along. There's significant investment and focus inside of Tesla for that. And the other side of that is both of these industries, whether it's robotaxi or humanoids, they create TAMs that are so large from absorbing from existing other TAMs, whether it's manual labor or whether it's existing, package delivery and human transport. So many dollars of TAMs move to these industries once the company executes, because they're going to be delivering these services at radically lower prices. So people that are trying to compute the implications of robotaxi or the implications of humanoids using today's TAMs and standards, I think, again, once Tesla executes, I think it'll be a much different picture. So just in quick summary, signal versus noise in Q1, there's real facts on what's happening. Tesla's reiterating what's happening from a new product introduction perspective, and these new industries they're going to be truly transformational. That doesn't say that there's not risk. There could be movement plus or minus a few months on these schedules. I think people should just keep that in mind when you're doing this kind of large scale transformation. That could happen. But in large, the company has, when you look at what's happened with the stock price movement, whether it goes way up or way down, the company is tracking to what it said it would do.
And the other things you just mentioned, they're all coming very soon. We're talking like this month, next month, June, and this year. Okay, so biggest discrepancy is happening right now. It's just really is. I've never seen it as this big of a discrepancy. People are still talking about the competition is coming. We've got news now from China about how FSD is comparing. We can walk us through that. But James, why don't you take us through your agenda you wanted to walk us through?
Yeah, it's more just a couple of very quick bullets to set the tone around helping the audience understand where we are and exactly what's going on. So the first slide there, a lot of this has to do with I call this tariff terrors, and they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. It's all a negotiation tactic, but all the market is down. So, you have Bitcoin down 30%, you got Tesla down 50%, Nvidia down 30%. Everything is getting hammered. Do not think it's Tesla in isolation. That's kind of the first point. Second, this is this term I love from Morgan Stanley. It's rare I pick up on an analyst comment, but I like this one. He mentioned Tesla as an AI compounder, and we can get into that later if you want, but I think it's quite profound. But we are literally at December 2020 prices. And remember, in December 2020, there was no Model Y, there was no AI, there was no Cybercab, there was no Optimus, there was no Megapack scaling like Scalded Cat. It was just insane, the difference between then and now. And we are way off the highs. And we went up very fast and went down very fast. We will rebound. We'll get to Analyst Corner next. And this kind of dovetails into what Jeff Lutz said. The Tesla customer base in the US are high household income people, more than $100,000 of income, age between 48 and 54. They have a tiny sliver of the market. Shout out to Satoshi's Musk. This is so important to understand. Once affordable vehicles come, that's a game changer. And that's, I think, why Elon Musk is very confident he could double down and sell all these vehicles. In addition, Musk Industries, this ties into the AI compounder. They have so much synergy between the different companies. When Colossus scales in Memphis for XAI, if they have any excess capacity, of course they can use that for Tesla, and vice versa if required. And there's so much other stuff, but we'll talk more about this. But that's just where I wanted to set the stage right now. And then we can talk about how the competition are coming and get into all the other good stuff. But I'd like to just plant those seeds and see what you all feel about that little opening barrage.
Yeah.
Jeff, AI compounding. Musk synergy, Musk Industries. I love your take on that.
Yeah, there isn't a more exciting or larger portfolio of products in terms of what they could be from an industry and transformational perspective than what they're building. And Tesla's been under this challenge before. They had to do it with EVs, and they had to create an industry. They had to create the charging infrastructure. They had to create supply chains in the US that didn't exist, and they did it. And it happened over a period in a time frame. And then they kicked off their own silicon effort in 2016, 2017, and now they've developed their own inference solutions, and it's in millions of products. I don't know if there's more inference in the hands of customers in terms of inference power than what Tesla's put out there. I mean, it'd be an interesting stat to go and look up. So now they're going after these larger industries. But I mean, what they're doing with EVs is no slouch. I mean, they have the arguably the only profitable EV unit in the world, and they're turning over their product line. They're creating new lower cost products this year. So they are now entering tiers that they weren't in before, and those tiers have more volume in them that others had all to themselves that Tesla did not have access to. So when you hear about growth of BYD, or you don't really hear about growth of too many other players in EV, right? When you hear about that growth, their growth is below 30,000 and below 20,000. Quite frankly, their average selling price is below 20,000, and more power to them. People at those tiers need access to EVs. It's just once that Tesla enters into those tiers with very compelling products, they're just going to absorb more volume, and that's going to happen. But the AI compounding is very interesting, because it appears right now there's been a lot of starts and stops in terms of AI, in terms of you had all the DeepSeek news, you had all these things that have been on again, off again. But what keeps kind of going along is this steady improvement in real world AI. And if you looked at the end of Jensen's chart when he presented at CES, there was all these instantiations of AI. And at the end of that chart, and at the tip of the spear, at the highest point of the most value, was physical real world AI. And that's where Tesla's portfolio is squarely pointed to, with humanoids and robotaxis.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that there's people, which is fair, right, to say there's competition coming. Okay. And that is good for us to really evaluate to what extent. And like Jeff was saying, you got to understand that there's different tiers of different, if you're comparing cars against cars, what price point, what segment are they selling to? And then what's the volume, not just percentage and all that. That's fair. But, people don't understand until they compare it head to head. Like we've been hearing for so long now, that do you not know that the Chinese have many different robotaxis? They have many different versions of autonomous. And they're so far ahead. Tesla then releases FSD in China, and for the last 2 weeks, we've been getting video after video after video of people testing and comparing head to head. And generally, they're very, very excited to see how much better Tesla is. Here's an example of it. Let me just remove yours. I have this new system here. So this just came out this morning, and Ray for Tesla shared that this Chinese blogger, so it's just one person, but this is a representative of the kinds of messages that you're seeing in social media in China. They're comparing FSD with domestic competing systems, and this Chinese blogger saying that Tesla's at least a generation ahead. Recently, I watched comparisons of Tesla FSD with the autonomous driving capabilities of Chinese automakers Huawei, Xiaopeng, NIO, and Li Auto. Conclusion is clear. Tesla is at least a generation ahead, with a significant gap between its learning-based system and the rigid, rule-based approaches of domestic automakers. He's actually very, very specific. So FSD drives like a human. It can navigate any road. It stops at the T-junctions to check for traffic. Highly courteous to pedestrians and cyclists. Operates with remarkable smoothness. While prioritizing safety, it may occasionally cross insignificant solid lines, follow other cars and running a red light if they need to do first. Strong sense of safety, and with Chinese traffic regulations integrated into the next version, it will be nearly perfect. Meantime, by contrast, other systems, they have several major flaws, right? The over-reliance on LiDAR. Once the sensors deem a situation safe, the system fully commits, which can be very risky. And it gives example of a T-junction, overly constrained by rigid programming. And then he goes on and how compares it. And we're watching videos over and over and over again. Here's,
need to pay special attention.
One example. I'm not going to play all of it. This is a dubbed, but they're testing it in unmarked roads. They're testing it compared to other systems. And here's another. There's a cat, and the system recognized the cat, and the system drove by the cat. And these are things that people in the US who've been testing FSC know that the system can do already, but this is something that people who didn't realize it are discovering it. So where's the competition? You compare it, and now you can. Now a lot of China, pretty well all of China knows now Tesla is way further ahead than everybody realized. So just another example.
I completely agree. And I even think institutional investors are starting to wake up. We heard from this hedge fund that does a lot of China investments, who independently tested Tesla FSD and other FSD. And they felt that Tesla FSD was very close to their top ideal score of 200, while the others were all below 100. Right. So I think that just shows the enormous gap there is. I mean, it's not because it looks like a duck that they're all the same FSD. There is a lot to it, and Tesla has been testing this on US roads for what now, 7 years, 8 years? You know, you can't just catch up as easy like that. And I think a good example to compare this to is actually the large language models. I mean, have you all tried Grok 3? I'm exclusively using it now. I have a subscription still for Claude. I'm giving that up. But it's just in a fraction of the time that the other people built it has caught up. But that is true for language models. I just think that for visual AI, it's much more difficult for other people to catch up in a meaningful way.
Yeah, there's definitely a cheat code that has been, it's out there. It's been exploited. It's how quickly are these AI data centers ramping up? It's significantly, I mean, it's almost an order of magnitude faster than what is kind of current course and speed. And that applies to XAI, and we see the output and we see the performance in Grok. And it's more than just the size of the data center; it's the coherence of all the GPUs. There are many factors now that can be visibly linked together. And then the fact that Tesla is able to do that and XAI are able to do that, these are Elon companies that are able to do this. They get access to these GPUs faster, because if you're the maker of GPUs and you have somebody that's consuming them, putting them into operation and monetizing them faster, they're turning the inventory faster, and you're going to be more apt to give them more. And it looks like if you combined what Elon is consuming, he's getting to the point where he's approaching CoreWeave in terms of just total GPU consumption. And that's all happened literally over 18 months. He went from not even being in the top 7 or 10 to being one of the top players. And that's one metric, but they're actually being converted and they're being used in production. But that same thing applies to that scale applies to what they're doing with the miles in FSD, and then what they're doing with their auto business in terms of hardware and driving the model count down, driving the volume up. And people look at the volumes over the last year and they're like, well, what's happening? There's a stagnation. There's a number of things. And you can also point to some of the age of the lineup. Like Tesla's not, everything's not necessarily perfect execution per se, but in relative to what's happening in the rest of the EV industry and the auto industry, quite to say that it's actually, they're actually doing quite well. And the final thing I just want to make a comment on, this announcement of Elon talking about doubling U.S. production over the last couple of days. I saw a lot of different reports of, well, they were already going to do this. This is already going to happen. This is not news. It absolutely is news, because if you take all of the reporting and you take the summation of all the reporting this quarter of like nobody's buying Teslas, there's a major problem, it's because of, if you tie all that together, you would think that there's a problem. But the fact that he comes out on March 11th and says, no, we're going to be adding this, it's going to happen. That is a reiteration of their prior plan with all things known, with, like you said, given what's going on from a policy perspective. He obviously knows his sales and his order intake rate, and he's adding this production capacity. He's adding it, by the way, to energy as well. It's not talked about, but we're building another Megapack factory now in the central portion of the United States to more regionalize these things, which I think you'll see with others as well. So that point of him making that announcement wasn't just, oh, this is already the plan and he's just saying it. It's actually a reiteration, and it's saying, look, based on everything I see, I need to be adding a lot more capacity to my business.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you guys, right? Do you guys think that Tesla is doubling down? Like they really are doubling down, not just saying that I'm going to double the output, but actually, like we saw with them, Megapack factory in Texas, they're now selling in India. He talked about Cortex 1. If he mentioned Cortex 1, that must mean there's Cortex 2 that's going to be coming. Yeah, just everything is moving, and they're investing heavily now. Whether or not that means that they weren't investing, I think they were in the last year or two, but they're now really going to let the shackles off and really invest even more. Is that your sense as well, or do you guys think that that's reading way too much into doubling down?
I think
go ahead, James.
well, it goes back to the thing I mentioned earlier, that the current customer base are these high net worth individuals, and that's about to change. And not only that, but again, the X factor of buying a car for, say, 30 grand or 25 grand that drives itself for $99 a month. The unlock of FSD is insane. And I mentioned this before. Like, I hate driving. I think it's a waste of time because it takes me away from work. But now with FSD, my geographic territory has opened up. I don't mind driving 250 miles late at night, twice a day. It's ridiculous of the unlock. And that's what people don't get. A self-driving vehicle for $30,000, bonkers. And a whole new market segment. I can't remember the chart exactly, but it was from ARK Invest, and it showed you every $10,000 you reduce the price of a car, your market expands by 200% or something like that. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. No, that needs to happen. That needs to happen for sure. They need to get into lower price tiers. And again, we're breaking into also a tier of buyers that have been literally, in the conservative world, brainwashed against EVs for the last decade or more. So that's going to be, again, these are things that are going to be hard to fully quantify, because I think you're going to have some, down tier, or you're going to have some destruction of demand just based on what's happening. It's going to be some number. Okay. Then you're also going to have some increase in demand. It's going to be some number. And there's polls now that are just conflicting in terms of what that may be or what it could be. But, that's why I always like to go back to signal versus noise. If you're not having the conversation about inventory and the product changeover, that's literally 90+% of what's happening. You can actually define it, calculate it, quantify it. It's out there, but I know people just aren't choosing to, because it's much more viral to start tying things together like that. And final thing is, just for people in the community, like, as soon as you start seeing like Variety magazine and Rolling Stone and reporting on Tesla sales, when they never, monthly sales by the way, when they never ever do that, that this is like a political, it's almost propagandist in nature. You just know that by definition, because they would have never done that over the prior hundreds of months of existence of the company. They would have never reported on it. But the fact that they're doing it now, a light should go on. And again, I would go back to the facts of inventory, product changeover. Sure, it's important to look at and study what may be happening with the brand. I'm not saying that, but there are higher order bits to look at.
Sorry, Alexandra, you're up.
No problem. I was just going to say, we have these calls for doubling down, pedal to the metal, and all that from Elon regularly. I'm not saying he's not doubling down, but I think it's just one of those motivation cries, and also a commitment. I think he wanted to let President Trump know that he appreciates the support, him buying a Tesla and giving him the airtime in front of the White House. But also Tesla is going to double production in the United States, which I think was the plan for quite a while. That's why Mexico never materialized, and that's why a lot of other things are now happening in Texas, the new Megapack factory. So I just think it sort of summed up this commitment to Texas, to the United States, and to Tesla as a whole, of giving it their all.
Love that.
Okay, so far we're all in agreement. We're all like major mega bulls. We're so looking at it. Are we missing something? Is there something here that somebody in the comments was saying? How do you know that the Model Y is selling? The new Model Y is selling.
I bought one.
Yeah, that's anecdotal, right?
Well,
Yeah, but
the Chinese numbers and the pre-order
exactly.
are insane. Absolutely
Yeah.
insane. They've actually, I think they've sold out of the launch edition in China or something like that. I saw something from AJ online, or it was really, really impressive. But I think what people are also missing, we'll say this again, it's not a car company. That's not the game we're playing here. And then when you say it's not a car company, but the competition are already coming or here or whatever, and that's what we need to kind of unpack. And I love hearing from Jeff about kind of the logic of scale and scaling up, and how the more you scale, the more you can reduce your COGS, the more you can control the supply chains, and the more advanced your lead becomes. And that is what people forget. And there's a cool little chart here, if you can pop this up. And it shows you the most cutthroat. It's on my deck.
Yeah, I know. This whole system is terrible.
The most cutthroat EV car market on the planet, literally, that most of them are funded by the Chinese government. Those two little red lines is from AJ, brilliant chart. And this is only part of it, because the full chart you can't even see. This is only the top 100 players. You can see Tesla's number 1, and the Model 3 is number 5 on this list. In the most cutthroat market on Earth, selling a car that is 3 times or more expensive than the second placed car here. This cannot be understated. And now they drive themselves an FSD launch in China. And the Chinese love their technology. And I believe the take rate for FSD in China
is going to skyrocket.
Months will double that of the US.
And it'll be a demand driver. It'll sell more Teslas in China.
Yeah.
Herbert, we can make a table on this, and I think maybe we can even do a better representation of it. And it's connected to this chart. And AJ actually published this, and I reposted it yesterday with some commentary. You could take the same logic that everybody's putting in now, where they're worried about like, are Tesla selling or not, and you could have actually applied it in China, because you could have said, oh my God, China, what happened in January? What happened in February? And I'm not going to belabor what I just said about taking inventories down the stock out levels, converting to the new Model Y. Those are actual operational things that happen inside of a company and inside of a supply chain when they're turning over their number one selling car. It's 2 out of every 3 Teslas that are built, and it's the number 1 selling car in the world. And when you do something like that, which is again the inventory drawdown, to stock out levels, and then the ramp up of a product, you're going to have this period of it where it looks like your sales are down. Now, what companies want to do is they want to crunch that window and crunch it in further and further. We want Tesla to do that. But what does this chart say? What this chart is telling you is, if you look at the last 2 bars, you look at the 7. So if you look at the first 2, the 7.5 and the 7.0, like, well, what's going on? What's going on with sales in China that those should be double where they're at? The answer is there was an absence of cars because they're changing over their new product line. But that same thing is happening in other regions in various magnitudes. That's the exact same thing. And soon as the new car is introduced, the car that everybody wants, the car that's the number 1 selling car in the world, look what happens. If you look at the top BYD bar, I know there's lines going over, but essentially their relative strength and growth is weakening week on week. And you see Tesla is continuing to go and crawl this curve. Now, it's 2 data points, but there's actually 4 data points on this chart. And it shows the absence of inventory and the reintroduction of inventory. And that 13.8, if there's no problem, that 13.8 will go to 15 and change or 16 and change next week. And it'll probably go up higher than that. And that will be the true signal. But if you're kind of looking at it early right now, you're already seeing the true signal right there. And that same thing is happening in other regions of varying magnitude. Of, you take the supply out of the picture because you're doing the transition. Yes, the optics are your sales are going to look like they're smaller, but that's actually the higher order bet. And if Tesla gets to, I think 15 or 16K, then 17, then 19K, their sales there will be no drop off in sale. And that will show that basically shows you that literally 90% of it is what this changeover in inventory and this changeover the highest product is. That tells the story right there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why others aren't as excited about it as me, but to me, it's like so like in your face.
Obvious.
It's like
Yeah.
so like obvious.
It's obvious. It's so obvious that
I would say
yeah.
like I would want to see more data points through April.
Sure.
On that. But to answer your question, Herbert, of how do we know the Model Y is selling? We know that when there's an absence of inventory, it's not going to sell, and we know when it's back, it is going to sell.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not worried about the Model Y, but many people are. That's the main topic. But I think we've been saying what matters more is FSD and whether that's moving forward. Do you guys think when Elon said, I'm going to double the U.S. production output, is that cybercabs? Is that the new, more affordable vehicles? Is it a combination of everything? What? Really?
I think it's a combination. Yeah. I think it's a combination because don't forget, with the best salesperson in the world, you like him or you hate him, we just have at least a doubling of the TAM in the United States and probably even internationally. I'm talking obviously about President Trump. If you hate him, but you liked Teslas and you recognize what a good car it is, it's very likely you're going to purchase it again. I mean, will there be some people that are Trump haters now jumping off the Tesla train? Could be. But people that are convinced about the car, they will stick with the car. I mean, I know so many Democrats here in Santa Barbara. They are continuing to buy Teslas because it's just the best car. They may not like everything Elon says. They may certainly not like President Trump. But at the same time, we've just opened the market. Sean Hannity bought a Tesla and publicly announced it. Fox News was for 2 days talking about how fabulous Tesla is. And then obviously we had the show in front of the White House. And so this opens up to a market of people who had never considered an electric car, who don't even know about the performance. Let's not even talk about the tech, right? They have not even a clue about the acceleration, but they're fanatics of quick cars. And so this will open. I'm not saying every Republican, every MAGA person is going to purchase a Tesla today, but the brand image has considerably improved. And you know how many people can afford the same car than the president, meaning a Model S Plaid? Well, a lot of them, because it's not that expensive. It's under $90,000, or even think under $85,000. So the way this, you know, there are lots of people who will be proud to say, I'm driving the same car as our president. And I think people underestimate what good that does to Tesla. The fact that, you know, there is now a complete new group of people interested in the cars. They will do test drives. They will talk to their neighbors about it. If they have the whole subject will become much more acceptable.
Yeah, and as I kicked it off with, the revenge buying happening right now will far eclipse the disillusionment. I can't remember. I think it was actually maybe even Gary Black or somebody else. They said maximum impact on sales. Dan Ives.
I mean, his charts were somewhere off. Jeff explained it much better. But yes.
But maximum 5% hit to U.S. sales, which is about 2.4% of world sales. So it's a nothing burger. But we're seeing nothing but X posts about revenge buying right now. Even people that don't even need another car, they're going and buying one, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I do believe it's a combination as well. And the cyber
even the Europe sales, right? Yeah. I think Tesla's Europe sales is 15%. So let's say it's you know, lots of people don't want to buy it anymore. Maybe a 5% at the most impact to Tesla. So it's not this thing where everybody's freaking out. That's if it actually is true, right?
Yeah, I think China and US alone, those two markets make up 80+% of global sales. So
what we've been saying is that Tesla's not a car company. And the weird thing is that it's actually this month, like in June, that Tesla's really not a car company anymore. Like we're seeing FSD, China's now seeing it. It's pretty clear now in China that Tesla's not a car company. I don't know yet why it's not clear here in the US yet. You know.
Dude.
Yeah. So, okay. So you guys think, I think actually that Elon is going to double down on robotaxis, and that he was referring to cybercabs, that's what he's going to be building more of. I think the confidence level is so high. And also the other bit about the more affordable vehicles, and we can debate this, is whether or not there's really that big of a market in the US for more affordable vehicles. Obviously, cheaper is good, but the size, if it's small, typically the US is not the market for sedans or compact cars. It's going to be China, it's going to be Europe, but not usually the US. And so when I hear him say, I'm going to double production output in the US, I think that is cybercabs. But in the other side of it, you can't get 600,000 cybercabs in 2 years. It's like, that's a big leap to say I'm going to do that. So yes, it's going to be a combination of two, but I'm just saying the vast majority of it is going to be cybercabs in his mind.
And to counter you on the small car issue, I remember circa nearly 20 years ago, people wanted bigger cars in the US and SUVs were all the rage. Then the Prius came in to the market. And California was just littered with these little Civics and Priuses all over the place. I mean, every second car was a Prius at one stage in California, at least Northern California. I can't talk for the rest of the country. But I do believe urban, suburban areas, there's a huge market for small cars, little runabouts. And there's an even far, far larger market for cars that'll pick you up and take you somewhere at 30 to 40, 50 cents a mile. That is a massive market. So I think we should talk about at scale and the scale advantage, because that's what people miss. Yeah. You know, they would talk about the competition, but there was this time-lapse video that was shared by Elon yesterday on how they are building 3 rockets at a time. So if you could share that slide, and we'll talk about, especially with Jeff and Alexandra here, we can talk about the scale advantage, which cannot be underestimated. But when you watch this time-lapse video of how they build rockets, and just ask yourself, who else is doing this on the planet? The answer is nobody. Tesla do everything at scale. Now, the Cybercab app scale advantage, people always say, oh, Waymo does this, and Baidu has a vehicle in China and everything else, and can't catch up. But when you look at the cost leadership, they can't be touched. They're building the Cybercab, which is a purpose-driven vehicle only for rides for 2 people. All right. There's already a fleet of 7.5 million vehicles ready to be turned on, and the user base is there, and they execute at speed that nobody can match. And that is, I think, a very important thing to look at too. And I hear a lot of questions, but how profitable is it? You're not going to make any money on a Cybercab. And then friend of the channel here, Søren Basher, put this out, and he concurs with Ron Barron of how individual robotaxis owned by Tesla could easily earn 30 to 50K a year. But what's important about that too, that doesn't even take into account like crazy other factors, like maybe delivery services, network subscriptions. And I think he only assumed 30% utilization or 35% utilization. It doesn't include advertising, entertainment, subscriptions, distributed inference when these things are charging. I mean, the sky is the limit as to how profitable these are. So I think we should talk about the scale advantage of Tesla and the AI advantage and the AI compounding for Cybercab. And then we can talk about the at-scale advantage of the Optimus robot afterwards. But parking that here, over to you, Jeff and Alexandra and Herbert.
I completely agree. And I actually think that they are going to be soon manufactured in other places as well. I was this morning reading a newspaper article in German about the German press asking Tesla Germany whether they would go down to part-time or even lay off people. And Tesla Germany said, no, we need all these people. We may at the moment not be at 100% production rate, but that is coming again. So you just feel this moment where everything is prepared in all factories. I mean, the Model Y launch in all 3 factories is the perfect example of what Tesla is capable of doing. Nobody else is capable of doing this, right? And that will be the case for the cabs, and that will be the case for the bots. There is, and obviously for Megapacks, wherever they can finally build them. But there's just nobody out there who can do that in that quality with those technological advances that others don't have. So I mean, I really don't understand why people are worried. I mean, if these, daily or weekly shocks and volatility is too much for you, Tesla is not the right stock, because it will and has always been a very, very volatile stock. It can go down 15% like it can go up 30% in a day. And that's, I said it so many times. I don't understand the people that do the call option play. because it really scares me with Tesla to do that, because it just, you never know when it breaks out.
Yeah, the scale advantage is clear. You can see it in every, you can see it in their sourcing strategy. You can see it in their vertical integration strategy. They attest to basically wanting, their default is almost to want to do the work themselves rather than pay somebody else a margin to do the work. And so when you start thinking about these industries, whether it's making a bot or whether it's making a robotaxi service or whether it's making a car, the reason they are where they are in terms of vehicles and having the number one selling vehicle in the world and being profitable at doing it and throwing off literally billions of dollars of free cash in a quarter is because of how they've actually structured their company, their engineering effort, and their supply chain. And now they're carrying those same concepts forward into it's their operational framework and playbook for everything that Elon's companies do, whether it's building those rockets at SpaceX or whether it's bringing up the XAI AI factory with all the coherent GPUs. The idea is, how do you take capital, convert it, and light it up more quickly than others and have it returning revenue back more quickly than others, and doing it with the least amount of waste and having the greatest return on that investment. So that's capital efficiency. And that same playbook is now being cut and pasted and used everywhere. And you can say, well, why doesn't everybody else do it? Well, everybody else can't do it. That's the actual problem. This starts from the capability, starting from the leader, the team he's built over more than a decade, and then the kind of talent that they're recruiting into the company, and that won't change. And then touching on other couple of quick topics relating to scale, they have tremendous scale inside of the United States. They have the biggest auto factory in the United States. So when you're protesting Tesla, and you're welcome to protest peacefully, people should protest peacefully if they believe in something. But remember, please don't, obviously don't, cause any violence or harm to people. There's no place for that. But remember what you're protesting. You're protesting the most U.S. jobs, quite frankly, and the highest output car factory in the country. So I mean, this is employing people, and this is helping grow the economy, and quite frankly, turning the U.S. into an exporter of autos, which is essentially caved in on itself over the past decade. I mean, we're not a huge exporter of cars anymore. And so Tesla localizing their supply chain and really driving that scale in the U.S. The same thing's happening with energy now. Now there's this big move to battery storage for energy, and now you see them regionalizing these mega pack factories. We thought it was going to be by country, but in some of these larger markets, they actually have to regionalize it inside of a country because these products are so large. But you're seeing the scale now. We went from one factory in Lathrop, 40 gigawatt hours, to now Shanghai, to now Texas, and it's accelerating. So I think there's a pretty big belief. The fact that Tesla they're back. There was a little bit of a retrenchment. I think Alexandra called it out a couple years ago of just, okay, let's see what the economy does. Let's see what happens. And of course, we had a little bit of a slowdown. We had inflation a couple of years ago. But what you're seeing now are these leading indicators. And Elon is as close to the White House and policy. He's not directly working on that policy, but he sees what's happening. And as a capital allocator, he's saying, I'm going to be allocating a lot more capital. And his history has not been to do that. His history has shown that he is the most efficient, the least amount of capital laid out for the amount of sales he's generating. So when he announces that he is adding capital and he is reiterating that he's doing that, that is extremely meaningful signal.
Yeah. In fact, Jeff, would it be fair to say, using the American football term of blocking and tackling, that what Tesla does with their supply chain means they are proactively kind of clearing, securing resources, adapting to changes, whether it's C19 or whatever else, locking up TSMC commitments for chips and NVIDIA, etc. And also, all at the same time, mastering scale, hyper efficient and effective production, direct delivery, all that type of stuff. Again, when you see all the different models, all the different competition make, and how Tesla really focus on nothing but scale, and they shave every penny off every single element of the car and probably their supply chain too. Or at least the supply chain knows that when they get a commitment from Tesla, they'll be delivering millions of units. Is that term too much, blocking and tackling, for how the competition can't even enter the market because they can't secure the supply chain?
In some respects, yes. And the difference is if the supply chain doesn't exist, Tesla makes a decision to either build it and work with partners in the industry, or if it's something that they want to lock up and do themselves because they think they have a distinct advantage and they don't want to pay the margin to a supplier, then they do it themselves. But I think the thing that people should just keep in mind is every industry that they enter, they create an effect of volume leverage, which is they don't put a lot of models and SKUs out. They don't but they drive tremendous volume towards a very small number of SKUs. So for the supply base, that's music to their ears. They can get an award on the model. This is what people need to understand. Toyota may ship 10 million cars and Tesla may ship 2 million cars. But the difference is Toyota is going to accomplish the 10 million cars across 40 or 50 models. We know BYD today has 45 EV models. People aren't aware of that because they have trucks, delivery units. They have multiple EV. They have 45 units. So around the same volume of Tesla and EVs, but they're doing it with 45 different models. Tesla's 5 models. So if you're a supplier and you're looking in, you're literally getting divided by 10 in terms of your impact working with a BYD versus there's a 10x multiplier working with Tesla. And if you get on the Model Y, you're on the highest volume car in the world. So what that does is that gives them leverage in the supply base. It gives them supply faster and it gives them access to lower cost that others can't get.
Great. This is Masterclass Answers. Thank you so much, Jeff. This is the experts in the field, guys. This panel is killing it. Let's see if you guys can answer some of the questions from the audience here. I'm going to combine 2 questions here. One is Roger's asking, James, what options are you looking at buying at the moment? And then we've got Gavin asking, are we at the bottom?
So first of all, I had 220 when Tesla hit 220. I saw a lot of technical indicators turning around. Everything from mean reversion, complete oversold conditions, long-term support levels, etc. But when I looked at the actual options back then, because the volatility was so high, it made no sense to buy a leap. And I am an options trader. That's what I do primarily. And I have hundreds of leap options on Tesla. I shouldn't say that, but very, very exposed. But they're all out to 2026, 2027, mid or late. But the premium was way too high. So it was way better off at 220 to buy on margin, just put 50% down rather than pay $100 for time value on the option. And bottom, I think 220 is very close to the bottom. We could be within another 5% of 200, but can you take the risk of waiting for 200? That may never happen. And yes, when Tesla went from 106 to 250, everybody was excited, and then it fell back down to 160 for quite some time, and then it shot up from 250 all the way to 485, and then it came right back down again. People don't understand it's a volatile beast. It's just like Bitcoin or anything else, but that's also where the alpha is. And if you can stomach the volatility and position yourself and during very oversold conditions, do things in layers, that's kind of the way to play it. So that's how I play it. And I continue to stack.
Thank you for sharing that, James. You are the expert, one of the people that knows quite a bit about,
Jeff looks disappointed that I continue to stack.
No,
I'm not disappointed. And no, I think everybody's in a different position. So I think that's you made the right decision for you. Everybody's got to make their own decision for themselves.
Yeah, very good point. And again, this also is kind of a time in the market game too, everybody. We know what's over the hill. You just got to position yourself for what's coming. And Elon said it himself, 2026 will be incredible. 2027 will be off the charts. I can't remember his exact words, bombastic or something. But that's what you're positioning yourself for. So do you all believe here that 2026 will be insane and 2027 will be even more incredible? And in fact, Søren Basher said at 220, Tesla was trading at a PE of 1 on 2030 earnings the other day. Will 2026 be great or not? Alexandra?
Of course it will. 2026
I mean,
and then 2027. I'm convinced. You know my theory about when Tesla would change its bucket from the consumer discretionary. So I mean, I think everything is actually on time for that scenario. That's always been my scenario. I've talked about it dozens of times, and I'm still convinced that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's all about probabilities, and the probabilities continue to improve as the months go by, that it's going to happen within the next year, let's say, or 2 years from now. It just continues to improve because, again, we are tracking all of these little tiny, they just got their permit from California. The FSD was released in China. We're seeing good results. We're seeing them testing cybercabs over and over and over again. All these things add up to increasing the probability that these programs are going to be launched at a certain time frame, and then it's going to work. And so you just got to keep following these things.
In fact, you could even just look at Megapack in isolation. Everybody do the math on Megapack in isolation. That's going to kick off so much money. It's insane. 30% margins.
We already have a $10 billion per year of $100 billion revenue. So 10% of the sales in 2024 was Megapacks. Now they just built the Shanghai. That's going to be another $10 billion. Then they just announced another Megapack factory in Texas that might take, let's say, a year for that to build. That will be another 8 to 10 billion. And by the way, these two other new Megapacks could be bigger than the Lathrop because of the size, and who knows if they're actually going to be double the size eventually. So it could be just very soon, Megapack alone will be equal to the current market cap of the company is today. Just energy alone. All right, so let's go some more questions here. Why did Elon say Cybercab production in 2026? How can they start Robotaxi in June of 2025? A lot of people picked up when Elon was talking in front of the White House that he said Cybercab production will start in 2026, and people said, "Oh, wasn't it supposed to start this year?"
No, that's at scale production.
That's volume production. Yeah. They may do startup production at the end of this year, and they'll be doing all the successive phases that lead up to that, which will probably be many hundreds or thousands of vehicles will be produced, and you'll see them being used in June is the answer to your question. And they're producing them now, actually, as part of the process to get to startup production. So there's startup production, which could be, in the second half of this year, and then there's volume production, which will occur throughout 2026, where they take all their supply chain and they take their factories and they take them to peak scale.
I agree. I think most of us are not reacting to that statement. We just think that he just didn't say scale production, as that he said before. How much revenue will FSD uptake in Mexico and China add this quarter? Surely the potential uptake in added revenue is already massive.
No, it's not. It's not massive yet. I mean, first of all, they don't distinguish the number, so we can't really, put any hypothesis on it. I think what will happen is lots of people are now tempted, and I did that, to purchase FSD rather than subscribe to it, because then you have it at the current price. And because it's getting so good that sooner or later they will increase prices. This won't stay at $99 a month. So, and that will be the moment we will see either a higher uptake up front or increased revenues on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think in China, they're only selling it at $8,800 US dollars as a one-time sale. They've not yet released a monthly subscription. If they release that monthly subscription, all of this will skyrocket up.
Exactly, and only on AI4 cars, so everybody that has a hardware 3 cannot upgrade yet.
Yeah, and so it's still small numbers, but there's now code that is showing that they're actually going to improve the maps on the hardware 3 cars in China, which means that they're probably going to release FSD for hardware 3 cars sometime shortly. So, right. So still very early. Jeff, question for you. What are the key elements to achieving a doubling in production in the US?
New vehicles at lower price points that will drive the available market higher, which when you drive the available market you're in higher, there's more demand for you. So that's what will drive the doubling of production, new vehicles at lower prices. And of course, the introduction of Robotaxi.
And maybe let me address that, because this morning there were lots of people speculating that there will be a cheaper version of the Model Y, either in China or whatever else. I don't believe that at all. I mean, obviously at the moment, the new Model Y, you only have the launch series. There will be soon, who knows when, a real long range all-wheel drive. And there will be eventually also a rear wheel with a less extended range. So if people speculate on that, that's just normal diversification of models. My conviction is still, and I have no indications, I have nobody who told me anything, that there will be a shorter car, hatchback, something more compact, and that is going to bring doubling.
Yeah, and my answer to the previous question, I think China alone within a year could bring in 2 billion. That's 250,000 cars times 8,000. You divide that by 3 billion shares. That's the increase to earnings per share, which is quite substantial. So I add my 2 cents there.
Yeah,
And
it will
I
come.
think
It will come.
even more important, and you guys tell me, is this even more important than FSD sales? Is actually the demand driver? How many more cars people will buy Teslas when they now know that there's FSD that's available to?
It's flip phone versus smartphone. It's a
It is.
huge
And people
edge.
have no idea. I mean, it is crazy how many people have no idea.
Yeah, it's big. Okay, last comments
So,
about.
by the way,
what we
that's
were talking-
that's one thing I think we should really tell people all the time. Get neighbors in your car, show them. If you use FSD, promote it, help promoting it, because that's the only way people will see, and it's then so easy for them to be convinced. Yeah. Sorry,
It's shocking. I had a friend who owns 3 Teslas. Did not know about FSD. I'm like,
Yeah.
like what?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. How did you not know about that? But that's fair. That's fair.
And I mean, I use it all the time. So I have all this leisure of watching other people drive. So many Tesla drivers still have their 2 hands clinged on their steering wheel. So there's still a lot that don't use it. I was really very hesitant and late to the game in using it, because Santa Barbara is a very complicated grid and not a good reception. And I was just, waiting for the final version. And then finally, Omar told me, I think you can give it a try now, knowing the grandma I am. And I tried it, and now it's 99%. It would be 100% if there wouldn't be from time to time a shady area where I can't, get it to work. But other than that, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I talk to anybody I can about it. They must be also tired about it. But we should, bring it out, let people sit next to us, let them experience it. That's the best way of selling it.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. You got James, InvestAnswer, the man. Thank you very much. Analytical Bull always comes with actual research and data points. You got Alexandra Mertz. We know what she's able to do for Tesla. And then you got the true expert here, Jeff Lutz, true expert. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
See you soon.
Thank you.